How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Lamed Ches, Daf 138 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, friends. Okay, this was the second daf that I did Chazorah on at the Chasana. I'm recording all these Friday, so I'm recording all these dafs zusammen. That's all on Friday. Because I had a chasana, one second. So because I had a chasana, I didn't record on Thursday. Instead, I figured I'd just do the chazar at the chasana and then I record more on today. So there's 3 daf today. This is the second daf that I recorded at the chasana. Reviewed at the chasana, and I managed to pull some people in as well. Yeah, it's nice when everyone's dancing and you show up with your Gemara and just open it up and start learning with them while they're dancing. It works very good. Pretty good, I'd say. Alright, so on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Omid Beis. Alright, Azoy. So we start, Kuf Lamed Zayin Omid Beis, about 4 lines on the bottom. Amr Yehuda, Amr Shmuel, says Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Hakos of Nechosav La'acher. Okay, so somebody who writes. So I don't know, when it says somebody who writes, I assume it's talking about a Shchiv Mirah. Let me actually confirm this. That's what I assumed. So Taka, Reb Micha Azriel Gordon, he Taka asked me this kasha. Yeah, so is it talking about a Shchiv Mirah? Alright. Applies only to a Shchiv Mirah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I figured. Yeah, exactly. Oral verbal declaration is giving away all of it. Yeah. Well, no, I assume that this is talking about, because then wouldn't you have to make it? So I was learning. So Micha Azriel Gordon and Jones Rabinowitz. So they came over. They saw that I was learning, so they came over. I think they came over. So we were learning. We're talking and learning, and Reb Micha Azriel Gordon, he asked me a question. He said, because what does it say? Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Hakos of Nechosav Le'acher. Somebody writes over his property to another person. V'amar Hala, and the person says, Yef Shiboy, and I don't want it. Kana, he's nonetheless Kana v'afilu omed v'tzavach, even if he's yelling and screaming. So Reb Micha Azriel Gordon, he asked me, but doesn't he have to make a Ma'aseh Kinyan? Doesn't he have to? No, he was. Doesn't have to make a Ma'aseh Kinyan. What do you mean? If he says I don't want it, why? He didn't make a Kinyan on it. So that's why I figured. So I stopped for a second and said, Micah, you asked a good kasha, and so that's why I think it's Davka talking about Shchiv Mirah, because if it's a Shchiv Mirah, Divrei Shchiv Mirah kichsuvim v'chimzurin dami. That the verbal statements of Shchiv Mirah, it's as if it was written down and given. So there was a kinyan, he accepted it, considered he accepted a star, I figured. And therefore when it says, I don't know if it literally means that he actually wrote it, as much as he said it, and it's, because if he wrote it, then there was a whole shaila about, does it require the actual giving of the star? So I think it might just be considered kilu. He says that this is going to be, or kilu, the star is just a yipur koach, is just like kind of, for extra, recording of it. Okay. So Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. Somebody who writes his property to somebody else. I think that's a Shchiv Mirah who says that I'm giving property to somebody. V'amar Hala, and the other person says, Ef Shiboy, and I don't want it. Right? As the Rashbam points out, somebody who disdains gifts will live. Nonetheless, he is kona v'afilu omed v'tzamach, even if he's standing and he's yelling and screaming. Reb Yechanan Amar says Reb Yechanan lo kona, that he is not kona if he's yelling and screaming that he doesn't want it. Amar Reb Abba bar Mamel v'lo plige, and Reb Abba bar Mamel says that Shmuel and Reb Yochanan agree; they do not disagree, i.e., they agree. Kan b'tzavach meikara, kan Shosek Mekar. So it depends, what was he doing at the onset? If initially, right, the Shchiv Mirah says, I'm giving you my estate, and he says, I don't want nothing, and he's yelling, and he's screaming. so then he doesn't get it. But if he's initially quiet and only later on did he scream and yell, he would be kona. Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, says Nachman bar Yitzchok, Zika lo al yedei acher v'shasagel v'sovach. If, however, somebody accepted it on behalf of somebody else. Okay, so I guess that would probably be a shtar. I guess so. Like it, or maybe even kilu if the shchiv mira maybe even says it to some other guy on behalf of the other guy, but whatever. Let's just say that, right? Zika. So let's say he wrote a document. Let's say, and he gave it to somebody on behalf of the person who he wants to give it to, the estate to. Vishasak, and it was in the press. So it was. So you have the shchiv mira. I'm having a difficult time like assigning names to people, because like everyone's like different. Yeah, I don't know, because you have like a guy giving stuff to other guys. It's hard to like mention, like for some reason it feels like not like a very smooth Reuven, Shimon, Levi kind of thing. Maybe also because the players are always changing. Often with like Reuven and Shimon, there's like a very clear kind of roles. There's like a lender and a borrower. There's like, here it's like, there's the guy who's dying, and then there's like, sometimes it's the kids, so sometimes it's Yaakov, and then you need Reuven and Shimon, Chanoch, Yemuel. Sometimes it's just like a random guy to another guy. So like Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are just like always just sometimes it's a lokeach. It's like they take on completely different roles. It's like, I don't know. Anyways, so so if the shchiv mira, okay, so if the shchiv mira, I guess maybe like gives the document to Reuven on behalf of Shimon, okay, Vishosak, and they're all the players are there, right? The shchiv mira, Reuven, Shimon. Right, but then it's like, why is the shchiv mira called shchiv mira, and why is Reuven called Reuven? Why isn't the shchiv mira Reuven and the Shimon and Levi? I don't know. Akoponim. And Shimon, who's the ultimate recipient, was initially quiet, but then he started yelling and screaming. Ben Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. So now we arrive at the machlokas between Reb Shimon ben Gamliel and the Rabbanan. The Tanya that we learned in the Brisa, Koysev nechosav le'acher. Okay, so if somebody, let's say a shchiv mira, is basically gives his estate as a gift to somebody else. Ve'oyu boin avodim, and there were avodim as part of the estate. Ve'omer hala, and the recipient says, "Efshi boin, I don't want the avodim." Im hoya rabon sheni koin, if the recipient was a koin, hare elu ochlin b'truma. So these avodim would be eligible to eat truma, meaning his yelling and screaming was irrelevant, right? Saying Ef Shiboyin was irrelevant, right? Because kinyan kasba hen yochlu belachmo. Is that what the pasuk is? Maybe. Akoponim. What am I doing? What am I saying? Oh, so you have the shchiv mira who's mizake, he's kosed nechasav to this recipient, and the recipient says, "I don't want the avodim." He gets the avodim nonetheless. Yelling and screaming doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, "Rabbi Shimon Gamliel came to Omer Hala Yefshi Boyin." That once the recipient says, "I don't want him," kvar zachu boyin yarshin, so he doesn't get him, and rather the heirs of the shchiv mira would get the avodim. We asked for Tanakama. I don't understand. According to Tanakama, afilu omer b'tzavach, even if he's screaming and yelling, the recipient is screaming and yelling and saying, "I don't want the avodim," he still gets them. Amar Rava v'tema Rabbi Yechanan b'tzavach meikar. Says Rava. Some say Rabbi Yechanan. Well, if b'tzavach meikar, when he's yelling and screaming, milachatchila, saying, "I don't want him," everyone would agree in that scenario, then he doesn't get him. If he was initially quiet and then ultimately started screaming and yelling, so of course he's kona. Ki plige, where they argue, is shezika loy al yedei acher. It's talking about where the shchiv mira I guess gave a document to somebody else on behalf of the recipient. And the recipient was there, and he was initially quiet, and then he started screaming and yelling later. The Tanakam is Sovar, the Tanakam holds, Midishosik, from the fact that he was initially quiet, koninu. So he is, right, the recipient is kone, the estate. And the reason why he was yelling and screaming, mehader hu dekader bay. When he starts yelling and screaming, he's then, I guess, changed his mind, but he had initially accepted it already. That the ultimate result, that meaning when he ultimately screams and yells, it indicates that was his intention the whole time, i.e. to scream and yell, i.e. that he doesn't want to avodim. The reason why he delayed his screaming and yelling, he says, look, as long as I haven't received them yet, so why should I scream and yell? Why should I hakachainik? What does it say? It's annoying. It's a gnai. It's pasnish to scream and yell if he doesn't even have the avodim yet that he doesn't want. But once he gets them, oh boy, then he starts screaming and he starts yelling. So Shchivmira. Gewaldig. Right. Azoi. Okay. So at this point, I think Micha, Azriel, and Jones moved on to greener pastures. I think they probably realized, like, learning sugyas of Yerusha at a chasana, there might be other stations to stop at, some of which might be more enjoyable. Some may disagree. But anyways, at this point, they moved on to do other things. So therefore, at this point, this was just me off all the way at the end, at a safe distance, pacing back and forth, and reviewing Daf Kuf Lamed Ches from Masechta BavaBasra, so that we can learn it together right now. Tanu Rabbanan Shchiv Mira Sha'amar Tnumasayim Zuz Lefloni V'Shlosh Meos Lefloni V'Av Meos Lefloni. Shchiv Mira who says, give 200 zuz to so and so. 1, V'shlosh meos lefloni, and 300 zuz to so and so 2, V'arba meos lefloni, and 400 zuz to so and so 3. Ein omrim kol kodem b'shtar zocha. So we do not say that there is any sort of order there. Meaning the document says 200 goes to, let's say, whatever, Ruvain, 300 to Shimon, 400 to Levi. Okay, it's not like Ruvain goes first or has any priority. Therefore, if there is like if Yehuda shows up and says, hey, the Shchiv Mira owes me money, he owes me 9 zuzes. So in that case, there's no hierarchy over here. Rather, if Yehuda is owed 9 zuzes, so Ruvain, who received 200 zuz, would shell out 2 zuzes. Shimon, who received 300 zuz, would shell out 3 zuzes. And Levi, who received 400 zuz, would shell out 4 zuzes. 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 9. Okay? So Gov Mukulam. So Yehuda, the Baal Chov, would collect from all of them equally. Aval, however, Omar, if the Shchiv Mira says, Tnu Masayim Zuz Lefloni V'Acharov Lefloni, but if the Shchiv Mira says, give 200 zuz to Reuven, and then 300 zuz to Shimon, and then 300 zuz to Levi, so there is 400 zuz to Levi, so there is in order of priority. Reuven going first, Shimon going second, Levi going third. So therefore, right, in third place, Kilu. So Omrim Kol Kodem B'Shtar Zochus. So we say whoever has precedence in the document has priority, i.e. Reuven, and then Shimon, and then Levi. Lefichach Yos Olav Shtar Choiv Govim Ha'achrin Ein Lo Govim Shelafanav Ein Lo Govim Shelafnei Fanav. So therefore, if a Baal Chov, a creditor, comes and says that the Shchiv Mira owed me money, so he first collects the debt from Levi. If the debt is more than 400 zuzes, well, then he moves on to Shimon to continue collecting from. If the debt was more than 700 zuzes, the 400 zuzes of Levi and the 300 zuzes of Shimon, so then he moves on to Reuven and starts collecting from Reuven. right? So like in that case, when he says acharav, so there's actually a hierarchy, and you would start at the end and keep on moving up the chain as more collecting needs to be collected. Tumasayim zuz lifloni bechor karaui lo. A Shriv says, give 200 zuz to lifloni b'ni bechor, to so and so my firstborn son, karaui lo. And he adds these extra words karaui lo, as is befitting him. Notlan v'notas bechoraso. So he's saying, give the 200 zuz in addition to his bechora. Im amar bivchora. So if he says give him 200 zuz as his bechora, yadu al elyono. So then the son, who's the bechor, has a choice. He could decide which is the bechora worth. Is it 200 zuz or less than 200 zuz? If it's less than 200 zuz, so take the 200 zuz. If it's more than 200 zuz, take the bechora. Right? Ratzon otlan. If he wants, take the 200 zuz. Ratzon otlan bechora. So if he wants, take the bechora. I.e., take whichever one is more valuable. Similarly, if a Shriv says, give 200 zuz to so-and-so, my wife, and he adds the words kara'ila, so notatum v'notelas es ksubaso. So she receives, in addition to her ksuba, the 200 zuz. Im amr bichsubasa, if he says as her ksuba, yada al yona, so then she has the upper hand in choosing, does she want her ksuba or the 200 zuz. Ratza notatan ratza notelas ksubasa. If she wants, she can accept the ksuba payment. If she wants, she can accept the 200 zuz, i.e., whichever one is more valuable, she shall accept. And a Shriv who says, give 200 zuz to so-and-so who I owe money to, karoilo notalton v'notel eschovo. So the creditor takes the 200 zuz in addition to the amount that he's owed. And if he says as his debt, so then the creditor accepts them as the debt. So now, because he said karo'ilo, right? In all three of these scenarios, we had the word karo'ilo, and whenever it was karo'ilo, it meant in addition, right? In addition to the bechora, he gets the 200 zuz. In addition to the ksuba, she gets the 200 zuz. In addition to the debt, he gets 200 zuz. So what? Just because he says karo'ilo, that means that now he gets 200 zuz in addition to collecting the debt. Vidilma karo'ilo bechovo kamer. Maybe he's saying, as is befitting for his repayment, not in addition to the repayment. Omer of Nachman says, Nachman Omer li Huna, that Huna said to me, I assume that's Rav Huna, Hamani Rab Akiva. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, the Dayik Lishna Yesere, who makes inferences from extra words, the Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, where is this Mishnah? Samach Gimel. Samach Gimel was what? Was it Hamocher Paris? Oh my, Hamocher Esabais. Wow, we've done a lot of BavaBasra. Oh my gosh, Samach Gimel doesn't feel that long ago, but it was more than half a Masechta ago. And we still have another good amount to go. Wow. BavaBasra is gewaldig. And Bav Metzia, oof. Now, Bav Metzia, ooh. But BavaBasra is, ooh. Okay. Fine. Where are we? So so if he sells the house, that makes sense. Okay. So it excludes the pit and the cistern. Remember, I thought it was the pit and the cistern outside the house, but it's the pit and the cistern under the house. Even though he writes the depth and the height, still the pit and the cistern are excluded. And the seller would need to buy his own. It would have to. If he's selling the house, so he retains for himself the pit and the cistern, but the seller of the house would need to now work out with the buyer how he, the seller, would be able to get this pit and cistern now. That's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. That he doesn't need to now make an arrangement with the buyer for how he's going to get this pit and cistern. Right? This was the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham about mocher ba'ayin yafeh u'mocher or mocher ba'ayin ra u'mocher. that Rabbi Kiva says mocher b'ayin yofeh hu mocher. A seller is a generous seller, and therefore when he sold his house, which does not include the pit and the cistern, and therefore he retains the pit and the cistern, but he did not additionally retain for himself a path to the pit and the cistern. So therefore you would have to work that out separately with the buyer. Whereas the Chacham say fakert, that mocher b'ayin ro mocher, that a seller is an ungenerous seller, and therefore he included for himself a path to the pit and cistern. Okay. Umod Rabbi Kiva admits bizman she'amar lo chutz me'elu. Rabbi Kiva admits that when however, if Rabbi Kiva admits that if the seller says, I'm selling you the house, he specifically says, excluding the pit and the cistern, then he does not need to work out with the buyer how he's going to get to his pit and cistern. Why? Because since he didn't have to say that the pit and the cistern are excluded, because memela they're excluded. But he was explicit that they're excluded. What he's saying is that tafuye milsa cost, he's coming to therefore add to the agreement, right, to say that the pit and the cistern are excluded, and I also retain a right to access the pit and the cistern, like a path to access it. So achanami here as well, given the lotzarif becoming to tafuye milsa ka'asi. Since he didn't need to say karoilo, but he adds karoilo, it is to the tafuye milsa to say that in addition to the paying back the debt, I'm also adding 200 zuzes. Tana Rabbanan the rabbis taught Shchib Mira she'amar Mona Yeshli Eitzel Ploni O. So the rabbi taught Shchib Mira who says that so and so and I don't know. I don't want to use the word Reuven. I don't know why. Okay, so and so owes me $100. So Aiden Kosvin Avol Bishein Makirin. So look, it's a Shchib Mira. The guy's about to die. He says that so and so owes him $100. There are witnesses there. So they write it down. Now they don't know that so and so Ploni, that's good. They don't know that Ploni actually owes him $100. But this is a Shchiv Mira. They write it down anyways. Okay. Lefichach, therefore, but because they don't actually, since they wrote the document not actually knowing if Ploni in fact owes that money, Kishu Govet, when the heirs want to collect that loan from Ploni, so he would have to prove, right at that point, there would have to be proof that Ploni in fact owes the money, because the witnesses wrote it down without actually checking it, without actually knowing what they were writing. That's what Meir's opinion. The Chacham say, Ein Kosvin. No, do not write, do not record this money owel. Elim Kim Akirin, right? They shouldn't write down this loan, right? What the Shchib Mira said that he's owed money, unless they know that Ploni really does owe the Shchib Mira money. And therefore, since they're only going to write down the witness is only going to write this down if they actually know that it's true. Well, then when the loan is collected, the heirs would not have to bring a proof. Amr of Nachman says of Nachman, Amr li Huna told me, Tani Reb Meir Omer Ein Kozvin Chacham Om Kozvin. Okay, fakert, that Reb Meir says that we don't write it unless we know for sure. The Chacham say that we do write it, even though the witnesses write it, even though they don't know for sure. So I guess fakert. Reb Meir, and even Reb Meir Lo Amar Ella, when Reb Meir says not to write it down unless we're sure, Mishum Bezdin Toyin, because we're concerned about Bezdin making a mistake. Kilu, the heirs are going to come to Bezdin to collect this loan. Bezdin is going to say, "Oh, I see that there's a document. Okay, I guess it's good, right?" We're concerned that Bezdin is going to make a mistake and rely upon this document, even though the witnesses don't actually know, so therefore it shouldn't be written. And Rav Dima ben Arda says that we're not concerned about Bezdin Ton, and therefore you can write it down. Therefore, it can be written down even if the witnesses don't actually know about this loan, because we're not concerned that Bezdin is going to actually collect based on it without making sure that the loan really happened. But why should this be? Why are we saying that we're not concerned about Bezdin Ton? What about Rava? That Rava says, Ein Cholzen Elim Kin Makirin. That Rava says that we only perform Chalitza if we know for sure, that this is a person who needs to do Chalitza. Right, I mean, we would have to know for sure that this is actually the Yavam who has the ability to be mat to her. So we only do Chalitza if we know for sure that this is the Yavam and the Yavama. Right. Additionally, we would only do we would only do Me'un, right? A minor girl whose mother or brother married her off and she refuses. We would only do that if we know for sure, right? We'd have to know for sure that this is actually this girl and this guy, that they're actually married, and that there's a proper me'un going on over here. Therefore, kosvin get chalitza get me'un about b'shei makirin, and therefore, since we know that chalitza is only going to be done if we know for sure that it's between the yavam and the yavam, and that me'un is only going to be done if we know for sure that it's between this minor girl and this man who she's married to. So Avujay Makirin. So therefore we could, because we know that it will only be done in the first place properly. So therefore we could write a document even if we didn't, even if we don't actually know for sure, but we know that it only would have happened if things were done properly. Even if the witnesses don't know for sure, but we know that it would only be done if it was done properly. So Mishum Dechoshish in the Bezdin Toin. So therefore, doesn't it sound right? Seems that we're concerned about Bezdin Ton. We make sure, right. We make sure that the Chalitza and the Me'un are happening properly, because otherwise we would be concerned that maybe Bezdin wouldn't research it properly. So when it comes to what was the first scenario of the Bezdin Ton? By the Shchiv Mira, we said we are not concerned about Bezdin Ton, but by Chalitza and Me'un, we are concerned about Bezdin Toin, right? And that's why you have to make sure that it's between the Yavam and the Yavama. So, look, we say no. Bezdin, Basar, Bezdina, Lo, Daike, Bezdin, Basar, Edim, Daike. Well, there's a difference over here, which is that by the Shchiv Mira, there's no Bezdin. The Shchiv Mira says that Ploni owes me money. The witness is, this didn't happen in front of a Bezdin. The witnesses signed the document. So Bezdin knows that they're going to have to corroborate this and make sure that it's just, it didn't happen in front of a Bezdin. But Me'un and Chalitza, which needs to be performed in front of Bezdin, and therefore if you write this document without knowing for sure that this is actually between the Yavam and the Yavama, or between the Katana and her husband, well then, another Bezdin who sees this document and will assume that, it happened in front of Bezdin, I guess it must be, right, this girl can get remarried. So that could actually be a problem, because Bezdin, coming from a Bezdin, the second Bezdin would likely, could potentially trust that the first Bezdin will inevitably it's going to lead to situations where the second Bezdin just assumes that the first Bezdin did things properly, and they will allow somebody to get married who's not allowed to be married. So therefore, when it's by Me'un and Chalitza, which is Bezdin, which needs to be done in a Bezdin, so that you actually have to make sure that everybody who they say they are. But by a Shchiv Mira, you don't need a Bezdin. You don't need to know for sure that Ploni, in fact, owes the money, because Bezdin, when the heirs come to collect, they're going to ultimately we can assume that they're going to do the research, because they would just make sure that this document is actually real and actually recording a proper loan. Okay. It was at this point at the Chasana where they started saying that, okay, there's going to be dancing right now. All right, fine. The thing is, I was in the area that was mukdash for the women to be dancing. So it was at this point that I gewaltig. So here you go. So punkt. It was at this point that I went to the other side of the venue where all the people were, and I found Reb Maynard from Babylon Talmud, and Reb Maynard is a gewaltige Yid. I said, Reb Maynard, let's learn. And we learned the following Mishnah. Ha'av tole shumaychil l'chol mi sheyirtze u'masheniach tolush hareu shel yorshin. That so in a scenario that we've talked about recently, where a father gives his property to his son me'ayom u'lachar misa, so the son gets the gufa karka from now and the peiris la'achar misa. Now, so long as the father is alive, the father still has the rights to the peiris. So av tolesh umaychil l'chom. So the father, when he's alive, he could take whatever fruit he has. Fruits are his. He could take him and give him to whoever he wants. Umasheniach tolush, and whatever he umasheniach tolush harehein shel yorshin. And that which he left on the tree, that was like ready to be picked but not yet picked, so that belongs to the rest of the Yorshin. Meaning, the father has let's say 5 kids, okay, and he gives this property to one of his kids, right? He says me'yom la'achar misa, and from that point, this one kid, the first kid, gets the gufa karka, but the father sells the fruits until he dies. So the father, as long as he's alive, can do whatever he wants with the fruits. So when he dies, if there are fruits still attached to the tree that are ready to be picked, those fruits actually belong to the heirs, right? Not to the son who this property given to, but those fruits would belong to the estate in general. So now says the Gemara, talush in mechuber lo. Wait, sorry, no, I made a mistake there. No, 1 second. Let's read this again. So the father can give it to whoever. And whatever he left that was detached, right? Not attached. Sorry, whatever he left that was detached at the time that he died belongs to the rest of the heirs, right? It doesn't belong to this son. Now, so only that which was detached belongs to the heirs. But what about the things that were still attached to the tree but were ready to be picked? Who does that belong to? That should also belong to the heirs, because after all, don't we learn about what does that mean? What it means is that in a scenario, right? So the father gives the property to the son, so it belongs to the kid, to that son, from that point on. If that son then sold it to a buyer, to a lokeach, okay, so then. So be'etzem, the son sold the gufa karka to the lokeach. Now the father still has access to the peiros so long as he's alive. When he dies, well then the gufa karka and the future peiros go to the buyer. Right now, the son had sold the buyer, the lokeach, the gufa karka. He didn't yet have access to the peiros because the father did. The father's now dead, so now the lokeach has access to the gufa karka as well as the peiros. Now the shaila is, what about the peiros that were on the tree? That were still on the tree at the time that the father died. So we say in that case, actually, the peiros don't go to the lokeach. The peiros would go to the heirs, to the estate of the father. And we evaluate the value of those fruits, and we would pay that to the son. The son who sold the property to the lokeach would give him the value of those fruits that go to the rest of the estate. So we're saying that the fruits that are on the trees go to the heirs. Now, in our Mishnah, we said only the detached fruits at the time of death would go to the rest of the estate, to the heirs. But if they're attached to the ground, if they're attached to the tree, they would not go to the heirs. And yet, we have this other price that if the son sold it to somebody else, we see that the fruits that were attached to the tree go to the heirs, right? Even when they're attached to the tree, they go to the heirs. So Amar Ula says, Ula lokashis nopam kan bibno kan be'acher. So it depends if it's talking about his son or somebody else, right? So meaning, right, we're talking about a scenario where the father gave the property to the son, me'ayom la'achar misa. Okay, so if the son holds on to the property, so then, when the father dies, so now not only the property but also the fruits belong to this son, and any fruits that are on the trees also belong to this particular son. Only detached fruits would belong to the rest of the heirs. However, if the son sold the property to a lokeach, well then also the fruits that are still attached to the tree would also go to the rest of the heirs. Since a person's intent is close to his son, meaning if he's giving this property to his son, so he also includes any fruits that are on the trees at the time that he died. But if the son then sells it to somebody else, those will not be included and they will go to the rest of the heirs. Givalik, that was the Kuf Lamed Ches of Mesechta BavaBasra. Peace out.